Hey everybody, listen up. I got mega huge news. Meat Eater Live is heading back out on the road. That's right. Join me and the crew. Clay Newcomb, Cal, Yanni, Spencer's going to be there. Phil the Engineer's going to be there. Meat Eater Live headed back out. Now, when you get every ticket, okay? Every ticket you buy, you get a signed copy of our new Meat Eater Outdoor Cookbook. This tour is celebrating the release of the book. Buy a ticket, get a signed copy, Meat Eater Outdoor Cookbook, wild game recipes for the grill, smoker, camp stove, and campfire, which I'll point out is a $38 value. Here's where we're going to go. April 23rd, the Mesa Arts Center in Mesa, Arizona. April 24, the Balboa Theater in San Diego. April 25, the Grove in Anaheim, California. April 27, the Crest Theater in Sacramento. April 29, the Union in Salt Lake City. April 30, the Egyptian in Boise. May 1, the Wilma Theater in Missoula. May 2, the Bing Crosby Theater in Spokane, Washington. May 4, Revolution Hall in Portland, Oregon. And May 5, the last day of the tour, Pantages Theater in Tacoma, Washington. For tickets and more information, visit the events page at themeateater.com. Hope to see you at the show.
Hey, this is Tyler Jones, and you're listening to the Element Podcast. What's happening, all my woods people? We are in the Mouse House right this minute, hanging out, and we have a good guest today. But first, KC Smith, my co-host, my brother. You've been gone for so long. Actually, I was gone for a
We
lot of that.
both have been gone for so long.
What's happening,
This is
dude?
our first time to do a podcast together, like that we aren't on the phone in like 3 weeks.
Yeah.
It's crazy, but I'm glad because it's just been kind of lonely around here. Not really. I had a lot of fun while you were gone, and we had fun while we were gone. But me and the wife just got back from the Rockies, as you and your wife did not long ago, and the 2 kiddos. And man,
arrived here to 105-degree heat.
Inside my house. We got here at 1 a.m. and the AC hadn't been on for 5 days, and we're trying to go to sleep, and it's like I felt like a dog panting. You know, it was pretty bad.
Yes.
But no, it was cool, man. I got to go see the college buddies, hang out with them. Did like the close to the cabin, kind of go find places to fish and stuff, and hung out and ate good. A lot of them are having babies, so there's a lot of like baby playing going on, which
is that good?
Ain't really my
bad?
quadrant right now, you know. But I like the babies; they're all cool, they're fun.
Yeah.
And they're kind of learning a little bit
Depends
about
on
it.
how old they are.
Yeah.
If they ain't like close to a year, they're not really that fun.
There's a couple of them that are that age or so. They're
That's
cool.
good.
Yeah. But there's only one that's a little wee baby. He's the first boy of the group. But anyways, yeah, like what's good about that is my wife, like, yeah, she gets baby fever, but she also like is very observant about the bad things of kids. Like on the way home, she was like, if we had a baby right now, this would be a terrible drive. I was like, you're right about that.
Yes, it would.
And a bunch of other things would be terrible too. Just keep that in mind. No, not really.
The fact you can't take a nap, you can't sleep in.
You gotta find something to do with all these diapers. No, but I mean, one day we're looking forward to that. But not yet, you know. But what that allowed us to do, since we are childless, is we got to go camp at Mirror Lake, which is at 11,030 feet, I think. Which you can't do that with a baby.
No.
And it was pretty awesome, man. Like that lake, we fished, and I got so tired of catching 10 and 12-inch fish that I just kind of sat down and looked around. I mean, you just catch fish on dry flies all day long, like little rainbows and little brooks.
It's awesome.
Which
did y'all eat any?
No, we didn't. I didn't bring the stuff to do it. Pretty much because I was really, really rushed to leave the house, and I couldn't find my MSR pocket rocket in time. And the burn bans are for real in Colorado right now. They ain't messing around.
A lot of the places out west. I was surprised. Yeah.
But anyways, that was a super cool experience, and my wife is definitely in love with the mountains now. So
it's good.
We did that. Got down to 44 degrees that night.
Dude, I know.
Dude, how about that?
I know. It was so good. Like I was straight up freezing when I woke up a few times.
I made a scrape.
Did you?
Yeah, no, not really. But
I rubbed the tree.
it was pretty nice, man.
Yeah.
And too. And now we're back here in the heat.
Dude, the forecast is brutal looking.
It's really brutal. I left. The forecast was like rain for the next year. Okay, and we showed back up, and apparently we took that away when we left because now it's like between 101 and 104 for the next 10 days.
Yeah.
What on earth?
I don't know. All I got to say is it rained while we were gone, right?
I get. Oh, y'all. Yeah.
While we were gone.
Yeah. It was one of those real weird things where like some areas got 3 inches and some areas got none.
Yeah. I think we got quite a bit at my house, and it is toasty, dusty, dry right now. Like it does not take much 105-degree heat and direct sun to just dry things out real quick. I'm talking like all the beautyberry plants around my house are just like wilted already. And yeah, it's just
the natural browns.
I know. I saw a doe this morning on my run. That's actually cool. Right outside my driveway. Saw her tracks too in my driveway. I was going to take a picture
in the dust,
but I didn't. It was in the dust. That's for sure. It could have easily been blown away.
Yeah,
but today we have a podcast with Jared Mills of Midwest Whitetail, and I'm looking forward to this because Jared is just like a big buck killer. I mean, last year he killed 186 or something like that.
I can't keep up with it, man. Dude, he's got so many giants and like encounters with other giants.
I'm not even sure that the buck he killed last year would be legal in Texas with the spread rule. Like it's so narrow, and which makes it more impressive because it's just straight mass and tines. Like it's an awesome buck. You know what? Actually, let's just go ahead and link to that video, why don't we?
Yeah, sounds good.
Notes. So if you're listening and you want to watch that real quick, you can scroll down and look at the notes, and that video will be in here. But did you caught a pretty good brown while you're up there, didn't you?
I did. I forgot to include that. We did fish the Arkansas River a little bit, and I caught a pretty good brown. So what we did is like we got to the Arkansas, and I told my wife, I was like, look, I'm about to just guide you. I ain't bringing a rod. Like you are the fisherwoman. I just say fisherman because I feel like that's all encompassing. But whatever
it is.
You're the fisherman in this trip, and I'm going to guide you. I'm going to help you catch fish. What do? She is throwing this hopper dropper rig. Gets her hopper smoked by like a 16-inch brown. That's a pretty good fish for the river, really. I mean, the Arkansas isn't known for giants; it's known for quantities. And man, this fish like just jumps like 3 times and then heads downstream. And I'm like, give it line. So she puts her rod tip down, gives it a little bit line. It goes down a rapid, and then she didn't know not to, but then she puts tension on the rod, and she's just pulling that fly directly out of that fish's mouth. Mm-hmm. It comes off.
It's crazy, like how. Go ahead. I'll talk about this in a second. But
well, the situation is we don't get to trout fish in rivers like that often. Mm-hmm. So when we do, like I'm always trying to teach her, but we also have that husband and wife relationship where like she doesn't always like to learn from me as much. She does, but she doesn't. It's kind of one of those things. But it was a moment where there was like a good like year's worth of coaching had to be done in like a second or two of like all the scenario. Like we were in like some chest high, what's the right way to say this? Like we were in some black diamond stuff as far as like fighting fish and landing them. And my wife is like what are they, the greens, right, or something like that?
Greens.
Where you can still like pizza your skis. That's and nothing against her, but she just doesn't have a lot of experience.
That's
doing
it. It's as much the years of experience, and that's kind of what I was going to talk about. We just released a video, and it's basically just shows everything that kind of went on my trip. Mm-hmm. So I ended up catching like 5 native cutthroats, caught brown trout, brook trout, and all this and that. So the video kind of starts out, and I won't spoil it too much, but with a pretty epic fight on a brown trout that I caught. And I had a really lightweight rod. And like, you don't think about it too much in the moment and this and that, but like when I got to go back and watch me fighting that fish, I was like, I did some pretty good things. and I like cool. You take for granted like how many big bass have you fought at Lake Fork? You know what I'm saying? Like the timber capital of the country as far as like.
What do you call big?
I mean, just solid fish that can get off.
5 pound, 5 pound plus.
I mean, that's a big fish. I think in most places.
Yeah, that's a lot. I've caught a lot of those. Yeah.
But even like 3 and 4 pounders, you're trying not to get them wrapped around a stump.
Yeah, the idea is to get the fish in, no matter how big it is.
And so you just think about like how many fish you fought in your life compared to her, and it's an experience thing. And like, I had the experience. I mean, I've been in the boat or had it happen to me where a fish gets around a log, and you or whoever it was pulls the fish up to the log, because what you're pulling is the bait. The hook hooks into the log, and the fish easily gets off after that. And so, like, when I, thinking of that, I watched this brown trout go into a brush pile, and I'm just like holding him there until he wants to swim out, because if you pull him up to it and he gets hung, you're toast. And so, just things like that, you think about. It's crazy that. I've had to lose a lot of fish to learn things like that.
My wife went through some learning pains on that deal, because she's pretty heartbroken that she lost that fish. And that was kind of cool to see, to tell you the truth. Like, I was kind of like, Now you know how this feels.
It's like, now you see my videos, you have more appreciation.
Yeah, exactly. But wouldn't you know that, like, okay, so she doesn't have great balance. And like I said, B-teamers. But she gets out there and she tries hard. She's just in a new environment for her completely. So in between like little pockets, I would hold the rod while she walked. Well, I'm constantly just flipping the fly out while I'm holding the rod, and these little like...
Got to keep it upstream, right?
Yeah, these little like, B-level pockets, they aren't like the prime spots or whatever, prime lies. Well, wouldn't you know, I get smoked by like a 14 or 15 incher, and he's a fatty, and I catch a fish, and it's supposed to be her that's fishing, I already gave her this whole spiel, but I wasn't even like really trying. It was just like, I ain't gonna pass this up right here. I mean, I ain't stupid, So I caught a fish. Yeah,
that's good.
Fun times in Colorado, man.
Yeah, for sure, man. It's a good place.
Saw a bunch of pronghorns. Man, they're pretty. My wife wants to hunt a pronghorn too. Found that out on that trip. That was neat.
That's cool.
Yeah. She says it's because she can see them. She has a hard time seeing whitetails, but she doesn't have good vision. So, but pronghorns, she's like, I don't understand. They're just out there in the open. Like, nothing else is like that. She's like, you never see deer like that. And I was like, well, they're just different. They are built to survive on the plains, in the wide open. They don't use their nose. They don't use their ears. They use their eyes. It's like the one thing.
And their speed.
I saw this picture the other day. I know we're getting far off topic, and we need to get to Jared, but this picture was of a pronghorn from its like posterior, so the back of its head, and you could still see its eyeballs.
Oh, dang.
Like, they must have like 310 degree vision or something.
I've heard something that's their vision is absolutely ridiculous, whatever it is. I can't remember what it is.
But it's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's really, really cool, man. It's interesting animal. They say it's not related to like anything, really.
Yeah.
It's like interesting. It also has horns, but they shed.
Yeah, not antlers, but horns, but they shed.
I don't understand.
Yeah, and they're really just kind of like hair that's kind of matted up. It's really strange.
Yeah,
but
one day, man. One day.
Yeah, we always want to. It's like there's something cool about going and hunting places that you never have done before.
Yeah,
and I think that's why it's cool to talk to people like Jared who get to hunt like these. I mean, don't get me wrong, he's a great hunter, but man, he's so blessed to hunt these places where there's giant bucks, and we can learn stuff from guys like him.
Oh, yeah.
Because, like, it's the experience thing,
I was
right?
It goes back to that.
Who better to learn than from the person who actually gets to hunt giant bucks?
Yeah.
Like, it's not like they're easier to kill. They're just bigger,
And also, from the experience side of things, he has seen more 3+-year-old deer do X, whatever that is. Like, check this scrape out or go to a field and feed at night. Whereas, like, because they have those deer, they get to see that, and we are like getting a picture of some decent buck like once every 2 weeks, and so it's hard to figure out a pattern from that. And so you can maybe take like this information from a guy who gets a picture of a mature buck like every other day, or sees deer moving certain ways every other day, and like use that information to make assumptions about the deer that you've got, so it's a cool thing, man. And I agree with you. Like, that experience thing is a big deal. So I say we get him on the phone and learn from him real quick. What do you think?
Sounds good.
All right. So on the phone now, I have Jared Mills of Midwest Whitetail. Jared, how's it going, dude?
Good, Tyler. How are you, man?
I'm doing great, man. I'm starting to cool down. We have AC going. We live in Texas, so it's like 105 here right now, and it's going to be that way all week. So
yeah.
We're
getting a little bit of a break up here. We're in like the mid 80s this week, which is cooler than it has been. So
wow.
I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, I can imagine. Those are the days that we try to we're like, okay, we're going to hang trail cameras on that day because it just gets so hard, man, when it's hot to get out there and walk around all day sometimes.
Yeah, I hear you.
So Casey and I have been talking for a long time about how you always seem to be on just big giant bucks, and I was just kind of interested starting out. When did you start hunting mature or big whitetails? Like, when was that something you were really interested in and driven to do?
Good question. I'd have to think back a little bit. I think really after I killed my first deer with the bow was like a little 1.5 year old basket rack deer, and I was just gonna get one under my belt. And after that, I think even before that, I was obsessed with big deer, as a lot of us are. But I wanted to get one kill under my belt. And basically after that, it became passing deer until I had one that I really wanted to shoot. So I would say, I don't know, somewhere right around the time I started high school was about when that change was taking place. And it became a game of trying to find the biggest deer possible, running cameras and scouting, doing that type of stuff, and it became an obsession, I guess. And I know a lot of guys are in that same boat, can relate to it, but that's when I would say it started.
Mm-hmm. So when you say you shot a small one to get one under your belt, how old were you when you shot your first buck?
I think I was in junior high at that point when I first shot my first bow buck. And I think I had went maybe one season without killing anything. It was my second year of bow hunting when I killed my first buck. Mm.
So I know you mentioned that you guys are in the middle of a move right now, but did you grow up in Iowa?
Yes, I grew up in eastern Iowa. I've moved around a little bit, and in fact, I did live in Austin, Texas for a couple of years.
Hey, how about that?
That was when I was younger, but thankfully I made
was
it back.
Was that back in your touring days when you were playing guitar and singing the blues every night downtown?
Exactly. I think I was in 7th grade. Moved down there with my mom and went to junior high down there for a couple of years and moved back to Iowa for high school.
Cool. Oh, I bet the deer in Austin looked a lot different than the ones you were used to in Iowa.
Yeah, exactly. Seemed like there's a lot of them, but they definitely look different.
There are a lot of them. They're like jackrabbits, about the same size too. So what is it about just, we kind of talked about this earlier a little bit on the phone, but, and I'm in the same boat as you. Targeting a mature buck is something that I really enjoy doing, and there's nothing like it. But then there's kind of like this other facet, or this like also other, it's not always just a mature buck, but like there's something about antler size sometimes that just makes it different. And what is it for you about chasing a big deer as opposed to just a mature buck?
Yeah, and I won't speak for anyone else. I'll speak for me personally, but I think it's just some type of internal fascination with big antlers. And, I know we all are a little bit careful when we talk about this because not everyone has the same access to, antler size, and we're all located in different areas and everything's relative. But I still think all of us as hunters have some type of fascination with big antlers. I mean, the whole antler growth process, I think, is an amazing process, and it's just a cool thing that happens with whitetails. And unfortunately, I'm in an area where there's a lot of big ones, big antler whitetails. And don't get me wrong, I love killing mature deer too. I've killed some really old 8-9-year-old type deer that, didn't even score 130.
Mm-hmm.
So I love that part of it too. When it comes to deer like that, there's the story factor that I like the most, especially when you gain years of history with the deer, or, a deer's been living in a high pressured area and he's eluded. You think about how many hunters he's eluded in those 8 or 9 years. So then it becomes, I really don't care about the size of the antlers. That's just a cool story. But in general, I think most guys would be in the same boat if there's let's say there's a 5-year-old 150-inch deer and a 5-year-old 130-inch deer. Most guys are going to take the 150 every single time.
Right.
So, people sometimes like to deny that antler size doesn't matter, but I think there's that internal fascination in all of us. And for me, that's what it boils down to. It's just they're just kind of the biggest, baddest dudes on the block, and those are the ones I like to target.
Yeah. I mean, there's a reason why The Rock Johnson makes so much money. Like, he's a big dude, you know what I'm saying? Like, people like looking at that guy. But I mean, I'm the same way. Like, when, like, it's awesome to have a mature deer that you're targeting, but when you've got one that's so big that it's even more rare. I don't know. I just like rare animals are awesome to me. I mean, I just went up on a big, huge trip through the Rockies chasing after little tiny cutthroat trout that are native and super rare. Like a lot of them inhabit less than 10% of their original range, and they're rare. And I think that's cool. I post a picture of a little tiny trout, and everybody makes fun of me, and I'm okay with that because I think they're awesome and they're rare. And so it's not.
They don't understand it. But yeah, exactly. And it's the challenge aspect too that I think is inside of a lot of us, that we want to make it not as hard on us as possible, but we love the most challenging situations and being able to come out successful in those. And going after a big antlered mature whitetail is a challenging process.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, in my opinion, or thinking about this, I feel like half the battle when it comes to killing a big mature whitetail is finding the permission or the opportunity on properties in which they live. So say that, and this may be something that's not foreign to you right now with you moving. I don't know your situation exactly, but say you suddenly lose all your properties, like directly after the season closes. What does your process look like in the beginning as you start over trying to gain permissions?
Yeah, and I am living it to what you alluded to. And I haven't shared this with a lot of people yet, but I'm moving 2 hours away from all the properties that I have been used to hunting for the last few years, including the farm that I just bought. My first farm I bought last fall, so I'm moving 2 hours away from that too. So I'm not necessarily losing access to it. I'm keeping the farm, and I still have access on the other farms. But it's a lot more difficult to hunt when it's 2 hours away. You can't get as much scouting time in. You can't do as many, projects like you normally would if it's just down the road. So I am in that boat of trying to find some new properties and gain permission. But I do, again, back to that challenge thing, I love hunting new properties. I was thinking about that the other day because I was having this conversation with someone. I've only killed... The most bucks I've ever killed on the same piece of property is 2. Other than that, I'm always gaining or losing permission on farms. So I'm used to hunting new farms, and while it's difficult, and I would love to establish a ton of history with deer, it's a lot of fun. Starting with a blank slate and learning something different, a different type of terrain, and just gaining more experience. So that's what I'm in right now. And really, like you said, to be able to hunt big deer, they have to be there. And I'm moving to a good area where there is a lot of good deer. The country and the terrain, it is just perfect for it. So it's really about getting permission on those pieces that aren't being hunted right now. There's a ton of public land, a ton of really good public land in southern Iowa. I would even go as far as saying some of the public is better than some of the private around, just because it's just vast tracts, just thousands of acres of public land. But for me, and I have hunted public land in Iowa and Missouri, but for me, I love the projects and being able to do things you just can't do on public land. So I love the land management side. So for that reason, I can't afford another property right now, so I want to find a situation like I had before, which is where I do a lot of work for the landowner in exchange, get hunting rights and management rights and that type of stuff. So that's my goal. Definitely not always an easy situation to find, but there are guys, even out-of-state guys that own land in Iowa, can only hunt every few years. Why not help them with the property, help them manage it, look over the property, set them up for when they do draw and come to Iowa. Situations like that is what I'm going to be looking for. Places where I can not necessarily call my own, but kind of act like it is my own and do all that land management type stuff.
Yeah, that sounds awesome, man. And that's I like that you have goals on that. Like you're not just trying to find you a piece of property to hunt on. You kind of have a vision of what you want that property to look like and how you would like your access to play out on it. And it probably sounds like it's a little bit harder to achieve, but it sounds like you're up for the task. So it's and from watching the show, I can tell that you're not afraid to get after it and work hard.
For sure.
On that note, like whenever you're finding a property, I know it's going to be, different everywhere for like how much you can do to the property to attract big deer or give yourself a good opportunity at the big deer. But let's talk about finding a property that has, say, a world-class deer or a very high-end class deer for your general area, because some people, including us, don't really have a lot of world-class deer running around. But, you can pretty much say that most decent-sized tracks are going to have some sort of mature buck running around. He might be, just a good 5-year-old 8-point. But, it seems like you have a knack for finding these properties that do have just some muy grande whitetails on them. That's what we say in Texas. Maybe just jumbos or something. I don't know. But, just big bucks, So whenever you're assessing properties and thinking about door knocking or going and approaching people to gain access some way or form, are you using like maps more looking at terrain features and ag and that sort of thing, or do you actually do more of like the deer drive kind of thing where you're actually kind of assessing what deer are in the herd and what kind of the genetic dynamic is in the area?
I would definitely say I'm more of a map guy. I'll look at, Google Earth or, get on county assessor sites where you can see the landowners and that type of stuff. See who owns a lot of land in the area, even what some of the smaller pieces look like. I don't want to overlook the smaller ones. And, I wish I could tell you there's a science behind finding and getting on these big deer on these new properties, but there's a lot of luck involved in that too. But there's little things that I look for, and one of the biggest things is access to the property, not only for yourself, but how easy is it for other people to mess up that property? Is it on a river where there's a lot of people that can sneak in on boats and trespass on the backside of the farm, or does it butt up to some public land, or are there houses in the area where you might cause you some trouble? So I look at how many sides can I access it from a hunting standpoint, but also what's the outside pressure going to do to it too. So that's one thing. I also look at the big picture from like a Google Earth standpoint, and how do all the other parcels connect to each other in a certain neighborhood. So is it, maybe there's a big block of timber here and a mile away another block of timber, or maybe half mile away, let's say. How do the deer get from one timber to the next? There's got to be some little connecting pieces in there somewhere. So I think those are some overlooked spots too. Just little travel routes, pinches, travel corridors, things like that, that you can easily find on a Google Earth. So I would definitely say, getting back to your question, I'm more of a map guy rather than go out and drive the roads and try to target a specific deer. I usually do that after I get permission on 2 or 3 or 4 properties, ideally, where I can then start finding the deer I want to target.
So when you, I mean, are you just trying to get as many permissions as you can so that you have the ability to say, say you've got, 7 properties that you can access to hunt. Are you, like maybe only one of those has, I mean, maybe they all have a mature buck on them or most of them, but maybe only one of them has a Boone and Crockett class deer on it or something like that. I mean, is that how you're kind of approaching the situation?
Yeah, I mean, it's an odds game, right? So, you're increasing your odds to having that class of deer, the more properties you have. And it seems like every property goes through up and down years. So if you're locked into 1 or 2 properties and it's a down year for some reason, whether there's a lot of pressure the year before, a lot of good deer got killed, a lot of young deer got killed, whatever it may be, you're not stuck in a situation. You can move on down the road to a different farm. And for me, it's just about running cameras on all those, on everywhere I have permission to really find the deer, and then I can zero in on that single property. But I like to be spread out at first and have permission on as many farms as possible, and cast a wider net so that I can find the deer that I really want to target.
Yeah. So with a bunch of properties and running trail cameras like that, I mean, what's your strategy like? I mean, I feel like if you had several properties that were, 80 plus acres, you could get kind of overwhelmed with the trail camera game if you didn't have a good strategy going into it.
Yeah, and you're spot on with that. You can. And for me, I probably let my cameras do more scouting for me than most guys. I do scouting, but most of my scouting takes place after the season, and I try to apply that knowledge to the following season. I don't do much in-season scouting. I don't do much summer scouting for that matter. I try to let my trail cameras do it for me. And I guess mainly it comes down to time. If I have permission on a lot of farms, or I'm hunting 3 or 4 farms, and to try to spend the time out in the field scouting is next to impossible. I work a lot of hours and just simply don't have the time to get out in the field and scout. If I'm going to be out in the field doing something, I want to be in a tree stand with a bow in hand hunting and not just sitting from a driveway looking at something, So for me, it's just let the cameras do the work, and we can dive into trail cameras at some point too, but I think that's a bigger opportunity than what people realize. I love using trail cameras, and not just for the obvious standpoint of, hey, I got a picture of a good deer, I'm going to go hunting right where I got a picture of them, but really studying those pictures, especially over the course of the season. I was doing this a few weeks ago with some of my 2017 images, but I categorize everything. I look back and why was the deer here at this time, and how did he get here, and where's he most likely bedded based on where I'm getting pictures of him. And I think there's so much you can learn that gets completely overlooked on trail cameras. So back to my point, I let the cameras do a lot of work for me. I'd rather spend an extra $100 on a trail camera than go spend 4 or 5 hours of my time when I could be doing something else.
Yeah, sure. And we absolutely love trail cameras too, and it's they've kind of been all the rage for about 10 years or so now, and there almost seems to be a trend. I don't know if it's just like a cool thing to say, or if it's I can definitely see some merit to it, but like I just don't rely on my cameras that much because you can miss some stuff because you're so reliant on them. But I think if you take, and it's like with any tool that you have as a hunter, if you use it the right way and don't use anything as a crutch, it can be a super effective tool. So, how are you? I would assume that you have issues, especially, since that you have, had film of you killing giant deer. People, I'm sure, know that you hunt areas or whatever. How do you deter individuals from, maybe stealing your cameras or trying to go in and mess with your area, or, stealing cards or whatever?
Yeah, it's always a touchy subject, just because, I haven't had many issues with people stealing cameras, fortunately.
Yeah.
I think there's some aspect of guys being scared, especially it's a double-edged sword, or it's a catch-22, I should say. Instead, when most of my hunts are very public, especially the format that we do with Midwest Whitetail with near daily video blogs and stuff like that. So the guy can literally get online that night or the next day and see how my hunt went the night before. So, and especially if they know the area I hunt, I run into situations like that. But I do think it also scares them from taking the risk of trespassing, just because there is that platform of saying, oh, this guy probably has cameras out. He's probably got a platform to, try to find me if he does get my picture. So I think that helps a little bit. But I do definitely deal with giving out a lot of information to the neighbors just simply by filming my hunts and airing the hunt. So
yeah, sure.
It's I haven't really figured out the best way to do that, because I enjoy sharing my hunts with people. And I know a lot of people love following that format and being able to stay consistent, get hooked with a story or whatever it may be. So I don't see that changing. Even if I'm on a giant deer, I'm not going to hide anything. I never really have. But I just have to understand that at some point, and it's already happened, where the neighbors are going to know what's going on. Their hunting strategy is going to be assisted by what they're seeing from my hunt. So it is what it is. There's more deer around to be hunted, and good for them if they kill it legally on their side of the fence and all that good stuff. But it's a challenge sometimes. But fortunately, I haven't issues with stealing trail cameras or anything.
You're just such a helpful guy, man. That's selfless.
Exactly. Exactly. Just move on in on the neighboring piece, and we'll be all right.
That's right.
That's right. But don't go mess with Jared's trail cameras, because he watching you. Yeah.
Exactly.
But so there's got to be some type of trail camera strategy that you use, like a system to where you're not just picking, because you live in a high deer density area, where you don't want to put it in a place where you're going to run your batteries dead taking pictures of does and stuff. If you're trying to assess the bucks on a property, do you have a specific way to target bucks with a trail camera?
Yeah, really, it's mock scrapes for me. I start that in September. I love mock scrapes. I think they're one of the greatest inventory tools there is. And every year I learn a little bit more about the strategy of creating mock scrapes and certain little things that have made them more hot spots. And I love the vertical hanging ropes and things like that. I keep switching every single year and learning more and more. But as far as inventory of bucks in an area in a particular area of a farm, I don't know that there's a better way to do it. I don't like using corn or anything like that, just because I think there's so many gray areas, and I think some people take advantage of it. But mock scrapes, I think, are just a killer tool for getting inventory. And with that being said, of course, I've had situations where I miss certain bucks that just avoid the cameras, or avoid, where I happen to have my cameras at least. But usually I know about them just from spending so many hours in a tree and seeing them somewhere from the stand.
So on that vertical rope that you talked about, I've heard a little bit about that, but can you explain how you use that system?
Yeah, so I try to find a branch that sticks as far out into an opening as possible, and whether that's an opening in the woods or an opening or just on a field edge, but some type of horizontal branch that sticks out as far as possible. And a couple years ago, I started using, just probably 3/4, maybe an inch thick rope, black rope, and tie it down so it hangs down, maybe chest high on me, and put a little bit of, I've used some pre-orbital gland scent on the end of that rope just to get started. And usually after that, I don't have to use any scent. The deer just take care of it that way. But something about a vertical hanging limb or rope, the deer just can't resist going to check it out and visit it. If they're walking anywhere near there, I think it far outperforms. I've seen situations where I'm in the tree stand and watch a buck walk past a bunch of scrapes just to go to that one and then keep going. And maybe, if he's got something on his mind, some place to be, he's not going to stop in at every scrape, but he's for sure going to hit that one. It's pretty crazy. And last year I started, instead of using a rope, I started using like an oak branch or something that held its leaves and tying that with a piece of wire so that hangs down straight down, and that's been even more effective. I think having those extra twigs instead of the rope helped, but it's still hanging vertical straight down away from the edge of the woods. So that's been really effective for me.
Cool. Do you think it's more is it a visual key, like the fact that there's something hanging down, or do you think that they just, keen on it because you have placed the orbital gland on it?
No, I don't think, because I don't always use scent. Sometimes I just let the deer take care of it anyway. So it's something visual. Maybe it's easier for them to distribute their scent on something that's hanging down vertical as opposed to horizontal. I'm not 100% sure. All I know is it's way more effective than your typical horizontal branch. And even your horizontal branch, we all know they make their own little vertical.
Yeah, they break off a little
band anyway. Yeah, so it's something about that hanging down that just that makes them have to visit it, and so that's been somewhat my strategy on specific scrapes the last couple of years. And from a little bit bigger picture standpoint, of course, access. So when I'm checking a lot of cameras, I don't want to be leaving scent everywhere. I set most of my cameras up to where I can drive right to them on a UTV. So I don't have to get out and leave scent. And I just recently, last year, started using the Cuddy Link system, which is you can deploy cameras further back into the thick areas, and they send the pictures to a home camera, on the outside that's easier to check.
Oh, that's cool.
I haven't started using any cell cameras or anything like that yet, but this is the first system that I've used that's close to that anyway. You still have to be on the farm to check the camera, but you don't have to go deep into the woods for that. Yeah. So that's been a pretty cool system too.
Yeah, that's pretty neat. So whenever you're actually hanging a camera over one of these scrapes, do you ever worry with like the line of sight of the deer and the camera, and like set it in a certain way so that they aren't looking at the camera whether I know a lot of cameras nowadays are black flash or whatever, but sometimes it just seems that just the box on the side of the tree can be enough to deter them.
Yeah, and it's so interesting to watch because every deer is so different in how they respond to that. Some deer could care less, and then some deer I've hunted are super, super timid when they get to a camera. It's almost like it didn't necessarily stop them from working the scrape, but they worked it just real kind of gingerly and just were basically staring at the camera all the time. And it would be like that every time they came and visited. They just approach real carefully, and so every deer is very different how they respond to that. And I use that. And one of my favorite things about targeting these big mature deer is learning their individual personalities. So if I know of a deer that acts like that, I will put my cameras higher in the tree and angle them down to where it's not right at eye level for them, and that seems to work fine. But I also, from a film perspective, and just love getting quality pictures. Sometimes I sacrifice spooking a couple deer to get that, eye level, just beautiful Trailcam picture or video, just because I love to have those, and we make calendars and stuff like that. So it's another one of those things that goes either way. But if I'm targeting a specific deer and all I'm trying to do is kill him, and I know he's a little bit shy of cameras, I will hang him a little higher and angle him down.
Mm-hmm. So what's your preferred setting on trail cameras? We've kind of messed around with different bursts or video or whatever, and we found that video really is kind of helpful in certain scenarios. Do you use one or the other?
So I use both. I use the hybrid mode where it takes 3 pictures and then a 20-second video. Usually, that's my setting on a scrape, anyways. But to your point, I think absolutely you can learn so much more from a video as it relates to that deer personality that I was just referring to. Mm-hmm. You can just learn how aggressive they are. I think in a 3-photo series, there's a lot that you miss in terms of what was he doing? Was he actually cruising? He stopped at this, or was he in a hurry? Which direction did he leave, or which direction did he come into camera view at? So I'm always scared to miss something. So I do the 3 photos, just for ease of rolling through a lot of pictures, but having that video too when I want to dive in and learn more.
Yeah, sure. It's super handy for us. Really, it's like when we're trying to figure out buck bedding, and you can see we've done in the past where we have a transition area that bucks move through, and if you hang that camera high to where you can see quite a ways in the background, you can see, we don't really have a particular trail they were coming down, but we know they like to bed in this general area somewhere, and it really gives you a good idea, of where those deer are truly coming from, and not just the fact that, hey, they're coming to this scrape right here,
Yep. And plus the fact of, the higher you have the camera, the less likely it's going to get stolen, especially, you guys on public land or whatever it may be.
That's right, yeah. Yeah, for sure. So what time of year do you find these scrapes start to be beneficial to have cameras over? What time of year are they starting to hit them?
Obviously, September here in the Midwest is prime time for scrapes. I'll even start a little bit earlier than that, maybe in August. But there's no doubt they visit them all year round. They just don't get as aggressive until really September, when that velvet is close to coming off. That seems to be the prime time.
So when you're looking to set up a mock scrape, you said you're looking for a branch that hangs way out into an opening. But is that opening or that field edge where you're looking, is that in a particular spot? I mean, I know a field edge obviously is, right before, a bean or a cornfield where they're going to be feeding that night or whatever. But say it's just an opening in the woods. Are you trying to place that in between where you assume bedding would be and in between a ag field, I guess?
Yeah, that and combining it with somewhere where I know the deer are going to walk. So whether that's, some type of pinch or a logging road back in the woods or something where I know that there's a strong likelihood that the deer are going to be walking past that spot anyways, and the scrape's just going to be that added bonus to get them to stop and give you a better look. So I try to get as many things going for me for each camera location, whether it's a scrape, maybe there's a water hole in the background, maybe it's just a really good travel corridor, maybe there's food in the background. Just try to combine as many factors as possible so that you're getting the most bang for your buck, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
In terms of knowledge on that spot.
Yeah. So you're okay. I'm gonna kind of take it back just a touch here. You are almost always locating bucks after you have permission to hunt a property, but do you ever pursue a property permission because you saw a big buck on a road somewhere?
To be honest, I've never done that. I've heard of guys doing that, and I think it's just, and maybe it's just the area I'm in. It seems like a lot of the good properties are already being hunted in some regard, and I just think it'd be really hard to. You'd have to get really lucky that farm happened to not be being hunted, and you could easily get permission. So I've never done it that way. I've always done it the other way, where you just get the farm and then find the big deer from there. But I've heard of guys having a lot of good luck where they just spend a lot of time driving around till they find a good deer and they find a way to get permission on or near that property.
Yeah. So if you were gonna, obtain permission that way, or you just found a map or found a good property on the map, and you went in to ask for permission and they grant it to you, but then either on that occasion or somewhat later you figure out that it's one of those places where they'll let anybody hunt. How does that affect your decision on if you're going to pursue that property or put more work into it, or even decide to hunt it at all?
I've had similar situations, not where just anybody and everybody hunted, but I came to find out that 2 or 3 other guys also had permission, and the thing that I did was just try to communicate with them as much as possible in terms of what their goals are, how often they hunt, how we can help each other, that type of stuff. I wouldn't necessarily give up on a property right away just because there's other guys that hunt there. I would try to make it the best situation for all of us and learn when they hunt and what they're hunting for and that type of stuff, just because I think you're going to be better off if you're working together than if you're all trying to compete with each other and step on each other's toes. So
sure.
that's what I did the one time, was just find out, like, hey, what type of deer you targeting? How often do you get to hunt? Is there anything that we can help each other out with? And that seemed to be the better situation for that.
Yeah, I can definitely see where being friend over foe is always a good plan. But we hunt a lot of public, and it's I love the challenge, but I hate the competitiveness that kind of comes with it sometimes, So, and it's a similar situation to what you're talking about, just hunting pressure, multiple people hunting the same track, doesn't really matter public or private. But how liberal are you with, like, specific deer information? Because I like to just trust that people are inherently good, but sometimes it's not always the greatest thing. But I could see where there'd be a world where if you had the right, I guess, lease partner or whatever you'd like to call it, it would be great for you to have, hey, I saw this buck over here or whatever, and work together in that way. But it can also really come back to bite you. So how would you do that?
Yeah, and I would say I have the same mindset or standpoint as you. I'm probably too trusting at times, but I'm trusting until I get burnt. So once someone does something that's not right or a little bit shady or whatever, it becomes a different ballgame for me. But in general, I still think though you're way better off even if you share a little bit too much information. They take advantage of that and kill the deer you're targeting, whatever it may be. If you look at it from a long-term standpoint, you're still going to be better off just being a good lease partner, rights partner, and just doing the right thing. And hopefully at some point they'll return the favor and be more appreciative. And your point of public land, I think guys are going to just by nature be more competitive on public land as opposed to guys sharing rights on a private piece of property. But it's still about, when you're hunting public, you're scouting people just as much as you're scouting deer. And for me, by talking to people that I'm sharing this private land with, I'm learning information about them, which it may be just a little bit easier to learn that information about the guys on private land than it is about public land. But in the long-term goal, it's the same thing. You're trying to learn what other people are doing. You just have to go about it a little different way, just because guys on public are going to be more competitive by nature.
Right. So once you have obtained permission and hung your mock scrape rope and all this and that, and you got a camera out and you got pictures of a really big mature buck and you've located him, further, how do you narrow his tendencies down, and what's the next step there?
So if it's a new property that I haven't been on before, it really becomes a game of studying the terrain and learning the terrain as much as possible, because that's what's going to dictate how you kill him. Learn why he goes to that camera, how he gets to that camera, where is he going to feed after that. Learn every single piece that you can. So if I don't know anything about the terrain, I didn't have an off season to scout and learn, it becomes looking at topo maps. And then, if we're in the season, it's about spending time in the tree. And I do a decent amount of quote unquote observation sits that aren't necessarily, completely out of the game, but they're not high pressure sits either. You're not gonna mess something up too bad. So for me, it's just it's a learning game of putting every single piece of knowledge that you have and building that puzzle. Like, I'll revert back to last year learning this new farm. I had a late start because we didn't close on this farm until November, and so obviously we were in season, and all my knowledge was coming from hunts in the tree stand or trail cam pictures. So it was just get pictures of his deer, knowing that's the deer I want to target, guess on where he may be bedding and what his routine is, and you sit a stand. And I don't know how many times I didn't hang a single permanent set on the farm last year. Every single hunt was a hanging hunt. I'd hang a stand and take it down that night, and the next night I'd move 50 yards closer to where I thought he probably was, or if I saw him, I'd move 50 yards closer. And I just kept doing that over and over and over again, and just putting every single puzzle piece together, looking at the trail cameras, especially directions and times and all that type of stuff. That's really how I do it. I don't know if, it's not much of an exact science, but just spend so much time digging into all the information that you're given.
Mm-hmm. That's kind of what we did or do with trail cameras a lot, is where a lot of the places we hunt don't have much agriculture, so you're kind of relying on some natural browse maybe, but mostly like if you're looking for a feeding area, you're looking for oaks that are preferential at that particular time of year.
Yeah.
And so like there's really just not great, like the deer just seem to kind of wander through the woods, and I'm sure they have direction, and I just don't quite notice it, and I can't quite pull that information out of the trail camera pictures that you're talking about, but it just seems like when we get a buck a couple of times on a trail camera, it's time to move the camera back. Like you said, 50 yards, you're talking about moving your stand. It's kind of what we've done with the cameras. And I mean, I feel like that's worked well for especially for finding more daytime activity and stuff, but we're still, we still struggle to put the pieces of the puzzle together. I mean, what kind of, you sound like you really do have a good idea of the detail, like small details that you can pull out of a trail camera picture. Can you kind of expand upon that a little bit and talk about how you're understanding those better this time of year?
Yeah, there's so much. So if we want to go like this time of year, so like I mentioned, last year was my first time on a farm, but recently I've been going through images, and I tag all the deer according to name on my computer in the files, and that way I can search a deer's name. Every single image comes up, and I think there's probably Trailcam softwares and stuff out there that do this, but in my mind, they just don't know the property as good as I do, so I just do it on my own, and it's amazing. It's kind of an eye-opening experience when you pull up every single picture you've had of that buck in a folder and start rolling through it. It's almost like an aha moment, like, man, that's crazy. I wish I would have been thinking about this last fall. I could have killed him right here. Like it's hard to explain, but it's very eye-opening, I guess. It's just you get so much information that you don't realize from trail cameras. Guys, this is what I was alluding to earlier. It's just there's so much more you can learn besides just, okay, he was there at this time. Just, why he was there and how many nights in a row did he go there? Or was a certain weather condition that brought him there? It's just an underutilized tool, I think. Everyone uses trail cameras, but to that extent, to where how powerful they actually are, I think guys don't use them enough. So for me, that's what I've been looking at this year, going into the second year on the farm or first full year on the farm. I learned so much that I wasn't thinking about during the season, that now I can take this off-season knowledge or knowledge that I learned by going through the pictures in the off-season and apply it to this coming fall.
Does the rut, because I know you said you closed at the beginning of November, does the rut kind of mess up some of your assumptions about like bedding and feeding patterns when you've got deer cruising throughout the day?
It does, but when I look at a farm and learn a farm and try to learn the deer movement, I'm looking at all the deer, not just the bucks. So you can still learn overall movement patterns, movement directions, like you're talking about, if they're moving towards a field every evening or moving towards an oak flat in the evening. You can take that knowledge of what all the does are doing and apply it to a buck early in the season. So just, not overlooking the little pieces of information like that. Don't always just think about what the bucks are doing in the rut. That might not be your best option, but just overall deer movement, and then you can target specific animals from there.
Yeah, so say a giant buck that you hadn't seen all season on camera shows up, say November 3rd. How much stock do you put into that yearly pattern? Or do you tend to want to be in that particular location the next year on November 3rd, or do you think it kind of changes year to year?
I think I haven't seen it down to the date like that, but for sure a general core area seems to hold true year after year. And that core area changes size-wise. It gets smaller and bigger, but that general area of it seems to stay consistent. The only time I've really seen it change is if, maybe a dominant buck gets killed or something like that, and another buck takes its place and shifts his core area a little bit. But in general, if you're targeting a mature buck from when he's mature, and maybe you start targeting when he's 5, it's not going to change a whole lot from 5 to 6 to 7, or maybe 4 to 5 to 6. Just from my experience, anyways, it seems to hold true every year that they come back to the same area right around the same date or date range. Maybe not the same day, but date range seems to hold pretty consistent.
Yeah, sure. So you'd probably take that and then look at your weather activity for the 3-day bracket, 5-day bracket there around that time period, and hunt that on the favorable wind or the fronts or whatever, and it would probably. We have a scenario like this that we're going to try this year. I guess is why I'm asking you some of these questions on that. But I think that's probably the best. Take that and then the other attributing factors, and line yourself up for the best hunt you can.
Yeah, I would definitely take advantage of that because there's a reason they moved there at that time. And for me, that one farm in particular that I've hunted for the last 3 or 4 years. I don't get any pictures of deer until basically October, good bucks, I should say, till October. Mm-hmm. And then they slowly trickle in from October 1 to November 1, and by November they're all there. But they all show up almost within the same week time frame every single year. If one buck shows up in early October every year, he does the same thing year after year after year. If it's the last week of October for a different buck, it's the same thing year after year after year. So that's been really cool to see for me, and from that standpoint, I would definitely say, take advantage of that because I do think there's a reason that they're showing up at that time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. Okay, so let's take trail cameras out of the equation. You have just gained access to a property, and you're going to go in, and you really want to know if there is a big giant buck on the place, and that's what you're looking for. What other deer sign do you key in most for determining if there really are, or if there really is a giant deer on a place?
It's a good question because I'm not a huge sign guy. Big rubs are usually a decent indicator, but I would say I tend to lean more towards it because I already know I'm in a good general area. I'm in south central Iowa. Mm-hmm. So there's the potential for big deer on anywhere that has good cover. So I look for that good cover. Mm-hmm. I look for thick, nasty stuff, that humans don't go into, that it's just a very secluded area that's just thick and nasty and can hold a big mature buck. Because there's a decent chance in this country that there's going to be a mature deer in that area. So that's probably what I look for more than scrapes and rubs and things like that, things of that nature. Yeah. I just look for the cover that it requires to hold a big deer. Yeah,
that makes sense. I didn't really think about it in that aspect, but if you do live in a great hunting area, then you can kind of assume that the big deer are going to go to the big deer habitat. Right, and that's right. Kind of. So is it more like when a deer gets to that size and that age, is it more about cover than it is about food?
I think so. I think I've seen some deer travel quite a ways to eat. They just get there late at night. I think the security is the bigger factor. I think the security is what gets them to that age. So yeah, I would say that's number one over the food. They'll get to the food. It may be middle of the night by the time they get there, but they got to have that safe place to live during the day.
Mm-hmm. How far have you seen a deer travel, like in that scenario?
In that scenario, to feed in the evening, you mean?
Yeah, so like say that the great cover is X distance away, and that's where the big buck wants to live, but the good food or the beans is so far away. How far do you think a mature buck is willing to go to, I guess, have both optimal? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't think it's out of the ordinary for a deer to go well over a mile or maybe even a little bit further than that in the evening to eat and then go back to bed. In farm country where there's a lot of ag fields and stuff, there's not many situations where they have to go that far. Mm-hmm. But I have seen it where, maybe it's a farm that's a bigger farm that doesn't have any food on it, or, just maybe it's later in the year where the food sources are diminishing and they're still going back to that good cover to bed, even though the actual good food is further away. And that deer travel, I think, more than what most people realize. This isn't the same situation with deer going and feeding in the evening, but I had a buddy that he and I had pictures of a deer that traveled over. If you went from where I was getting pictures to him getting pictures in a straight line, it was 8.1 miles, and he had done this for 3 years in a row.
Wow.
Multiple times each year. It was amazing. Most people wouldn't believe, but we had Trailcam pictures and video and all that type of stuff, and that's the type of stuff that fascinates me, is those stories. And why would a deer do that every single year? There's plenty of food in between. There's plenty of cover in between. There's something else that made him do it multiple times each season and year after year after year. Mm-hmm. So that's pretty cool too. But in an evening, I don't think it's out of the question for a deer to go well over a mile to feed at night and come back.
Yeah, that's crazy, man. That's definitely what you would call a roamer. It's cool how they have all these different personalities, and we give them, kind of human attributes in it. But it kind of makes sense. They're just high testosterone guys. And some of them are going to stay in the same place every night, and some of them are going to go around and visit different towns or whatever, looking for some fun. So. It's
exactly.
They're cool animals, and a while ago you talked about the buddy that you're going back and forth with there, whatever, with the deer, and I wanted to kind of maybe pick your brain about how hunting with a partner or having someone that you can find like all your information with, and you can bounce things off of each other, how that can really benefit you when it comes to trying to target big mature deer.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot that you can learn, because it's two guys putting their minds together on something, as opposed to just thinking. You come up with things that you wouldn't think about on your own. Mm-hmm. But also, it's twice, if you're hunting separately, it's twice the amount of observation or knowledge that you get, as opposed to only going off of your hunts or your cameras. So there's a lot of benefits there. I think the biggest thing is just, if you are going to have that partner, and we kind of touched on this a little bit earlier, but you got to be very like-minded. You have to have the same type of goals, because unfortunately haven't been in it, but I've seen other guys have a lot of friendships ruined. Big deer make guys do some crazy things, and if you are going to have a partner you're going to share ground with, or share information with, for that matter, it's got to be someone you trust. It's got to be someone that thinks the same way you do and has the same hunting and management goals as you. And if you find that, there's a big advantage to have in terms of getting that information and bouncing ideas off of each other.
Yeah, for sure. That's what Tyler and I have found, because Tyler is very good at analyzing and asking questions about things, and like, why did this happen? Why did that happen? And I'm so much more of a inventory taker. Like, I walk through the woods, observe everything, and I kind of have a photographic mind and just take it in. But I don't always do the greatest job of asking why and why, or trying to figure out a certain scenario. I'm almost just too cut and dry sometimes. Like, I just assume this is what happened, and just go with it. So I don't know if you've ever encountered that situation, or if do you and Mike still hunt together?
Yeah, we do. It's going to get a little bit tougher with me moving, but we do. And him and I bought that farm last fall together, so we own that farm mutually. So, and it's even when I'm not hunting with Mike or someone that's not even familiar with the property, I still ask questions. I'll say, I'm thinking about hunting here tonight because of this and this and this. What do you think? This is our other option. This would be why we could hunt here instead. And just, everyone has their own experiences and things that they've learned over the years being in the stand. And it always helps to be able to bounce ideas off of each other. Even if you don't take those ideas, it's nothing but good to be able to take that in and take other opinions.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes you kind of just talk yourself through it more than anything, and you're like, yeah, it was kind of dumb that I ever wanted to do that other idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, I understand, man, for sure. So okay, so you've obtained permission on the property, you put out cameras, you discovered a shooter, you patterned him somewhat, you feel pretty good about it. The next step is hunting him with a bow in hand. So are you just looking for the correct wind at that point where your camera is set up, or are there other factors you like to see before you hit the woods, or how does that process look at that point?
Of course, weather always plays a big part in our deer hunting world, and we all understand how much of an impact weather has. But yeah, getting correct wind, and then also applying just individual things based on that deer's personality, because sometimes the wind, you have to play around with that a little bit in terms of whether it's wind in your advantage or wind in his advantage. I had a buck a few years ago that I was hunting hard, and I knew pretty much where he was bedding, but I could not figure out where he was going in the evenings. I had cameras, it seemed like, in all directions of his bedding area, and I'd get pictures of him, but it seemed very, very random until I started figuring out that routinely he would, on a north wind, he'd go north, on a south wind, he'd go south, and that didn't line up with the typical feeding areas. It seemed like every other deer, whether it was north or south wind, they went north to feed because that's where the closest food was. But if it was a south wind, he would go south and go find a different food source. So once I finally figured that out, I was able to get on him. Didn't actually kill him, but it got close. And it was just, but I had to hunt to the north of him with a north wind. I just had to move to the east a little bit so that my north wind wasn't blowing directly to where he was bedded. Mm-hmm. He was going to come out on the side of me, basically. And it's exactly what happened, but he came out just outside of bow range and never worked his way up once he was upwind of me. But little stuff like that, again, it all goes back to all these bucks are different.
Yeah.
They have their own personalities, they have their own reasons why they do things, and you just got to apply those little things to that. And you can't always learn that much about a deer, but it's a lot of fun when you do and get that extra information to apply.
Yeah. So are you seeing that a lot of this, you just kind of spurred a question in my mind, but are you seeing that a lot of these mature or big bucks are using the wind to their advantage almost all the time? And so like you almost should never hunt an area when the wind is just like perfect for you? No.
I think they do use the wind to their advantage as much as possible, but I don't think it's possible to do it all the time. I think if the wind's not in their advantage, they're just not going to move. I think they're still going to make mistakes here and there. And those are the situations where I like to hunt where it's almost impossible for a deer to get downwind. Maybe it's right up against a riverbank or a steep ridge or something like that, where the deer's going to have that little bit of travel time or whatever it is where the wind is just perfect for you, but not so perfect for him, but he's still going to move. He's not just going to sit there and not move until the wind is perfectly right. Mm-hmm. So I think it's just learning what terrain you're actually dealing with in those situations.
Mm-hmm. Do you tend to hunt closer to a deer's bedding area, like as close as you can whenever you understand where that is? Or are you just finding like a good ambush spot in general and hoping he shows up by that time, before shooting light is over?
Yeah, I like to be as close to the bedding as possible just from a daylight movement standpoint. Mm-hmm. Obviously, we all know that these big mature bucks are very close to moving at dark, and you got to catch them on their feet, obviously. So the closer you can push in, the better. I'm a big believer in taking risks, whether that be pushing a little bit too far in every now and then. I think we put too much emphasis on, if we spook a big deer, he's gone forever. He's going to move to the next county. I don't think any of that's nearly true. I've hunted a deer where I spooked them going in that night and adjusted my stand location or went to a different stand and still encountered him not that far away. So I just think that the risk is worth the reward in most standpoints. And if you mess up, you'll get another opportunity if you're smart about it.
Yeah. That's good advice for me because we've been living in this world where we have a particular buck on a piece of public that we've been following for like the last 18 months or so. And he lives, in my opinion, almost exclusively on a few hundred acres. And we have cameras out, and he's identifiable without horns on, I feel like. But he's, at this point, he's probably got some development. And he's by far the biggest buck on the property, so should be able to tell if it's him at this point. But like, we don't know where he beds. We have an idea where he feeds now and then, and he's one of those bucks that like his hawks are just super dark and all fall.
Yeah.
Like he's cruising a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. The thing is, we're having trouble. We've got daylight pictures of him in certain areas, and we've hunted there, and it's, it may happen only every 10 days where there's a daylight picture there, and it just seems like he's such a cruiser and, a lover boy or whatever, that he's just all over the property and hard to pattern. Is that, in your experience, is that is there a tip that you could give me, or is this just like, hey, you probably should just not worry too much with this deer?
Again, it goes back to a lot of deer being different. I think there are deer that have that personality you just described, that they're travelers, and they walk all night long, all day long to find the next available doe. So you said it's a few hundred acres that you think he's living on. Is the public piece of property that big, or is it a lot bigger than that? Yeah,
it's pretty much the public is, I think he lives within it, but it's not a whole lot bigger than that.
Okay. So you think there's probably a decent chance that he lives there, but he travels off of it quite a bit?
I don't know that he does a lot of traveling off of the public, really. I think he's a killable deer.
Okay.
He's just, he's
kind of random with his movement.
Very random. Like we'll have pictures. A lot of the pictures we had like late season and postseason this year of him, he would be. We had, I think, 4 cameras out on this property, kind of, in the corners, so to speak, of the property, and he would show up in this area for like 3 or 4 days, and you'd see him like twice there in like 3 days, and then we pulled another camera, and he's up there 2 days later or the next day for like 3 or 4 days, and then a different camera for like 3 or 4 days, and it's like he kind of finds an area and chills in it for a while, and then he goes, several hundred yards and does the same thing or whatever.
Yeah. So there's obviously a lot of information that I don't have. But I think in a situation like that, if I had this year plus worth of knowledge on him, even if it seems random in that 1 year, I would still apply it to this season, and I would probably check my cameras maybe more often than normal to try to take advantage of that pattern. So as soon as I see something lining up with what he's doing this year that lines up with what he did last year, I would move in on it right away and target basically going on the expectation that he's going to do the same thing as last year.
Right.
And maybe not the same thing as the last week, but the same thing as what he did the previous year.
Yeah.
I think that's where the starting point that I would have. And like I said, get maybe a little bit more aggressive on checking your cameras so that you can take advantage, even if it's a 2-day pattern and he only does it for 2 days. Make sure you're there on that second day once you got that first day of knowledge.
Right. Yeah. I mean, the aggressive thing is something that we weren't super aggressive last year. We definitely we hunted a spot that was kind of middle of the property, but it was. I mean, I feel a little bit different about it, but at the time it seemed almost foolproof. Like we were, not going to get smelled going, and we weren't going to get seen or smelled going in, and we weren't going to get smelled while we were in there if we hunted the correct wind. So it just like, it felt pretty good, but there was definitely like, we'd sit there in the stand, we'd be like, man, I just feel like if we were over there, like 150 yards, it would be a different story, you know? And so.
Yeah, you don't always want to be, super aggressive like that, but I think in that situation I would. And again, if you're hunting a mature deer, you think about, okay, he's been living on this property for how many years now? There's a reason he's still on this property. He must feel some sort of security. So you bump him one time, he's not going to completely move out of the area. You might mess it up for a short period of time, but I think some guys miss a lot of opportunities because they're just scared of bumping a deer one time.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't be afraid to get a little bit more aggressive in a situation like that.
So speaking of being more aggressive, how do you feel about like blind calling? And I mean, that situation or in any situation, I guess.
I do a little bit of it, but only the biggest caveat I have there is to make sure it's in a spot that deer aren't going to bust you downwind.
Yeah.
Because that's always what that big mature buck's going to do, is he's going to come to that sound. Even if you can't see him, you're blind calling, and he comes in, he's going to come in downwind. He's going to approach downwind. So if I'm in the right situation where a deer can't get downwind, I don't see a problem with doing it. The only problem I would see is if it's in a public situation that's highly pressured and everyone else is doing it, that'd be the one downfall. But if you're on public where there's not a ton of pressure, I wouldn't be afraid of doing it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's good advice for us too, because, so first of all, to be honest, Tyler has told me that he's not going to focus on this buck too much next year. He's not going to obsess about him. But he just spent about 5 or 10 minutes talking to you about this deer. So we'll see how that goes. We all kind of have these theories like, oh, no, I'm not going to let that deer get to me. And then here comes the season, and it's like, man, I want to go kill that deer. But, I think that's good advice, man. And if you, it's just like if you play conservative your whole life, on anything, you might get to have a little bit of success here and there, but man, it takes taking some risks to really make some leaps and bounds, and and if we're going to hold true to the whole, we're not going to focus on this deer too much, then what's it going to hurt to go in there and just try to get him? First time in, and if you blow him out, so what? You weren't focused on him, supposedly.
Exactly. Got other places.
Exactly. No, I could not agree more. And if you do bump him, then you just gained a little bit more knowledge of, okay, he's probably not going to be in this spot in the next couple of days. So where else? Where did I force him to that I can go hunt him?
That is a good point.
You can build your own strategy based on the mistakes you made. So, get aggressive. I think that may be something that I do a little bit different, and I think some guys that are way more successful than I am are very aggressive. So definitely, it's fun getting aggressive and trying new things too.
Yeah, for sure. So you've gone through, you found a piece of property to hunt, you've located a big buck, and you've done that 4 or 5 different times. And I can see this being a scenario where you live, you have, you're blessed to have great opportunities at multiple big bucks, but without, getting out the binos and really breaking down, this is a 168 net versus a 162 net. How do you decide which buck is your target buck, or which deer that you're going to say, this is the deer I want off of this property as opposed to this other one?
I would say usually I don't have to question it when it's the right deer. Usually it's just it's an internal feeling of like, yes, I want to kill that deer. That's a deer I want to target. There's usually not many times where I'm asking questions like, is he big enough, or is he? I'm always asking if he's old enough, because I've seen some deer make some incredible jumps just by having one extra year under their belt. So age is something that we're always very careful with. But in terms of a deer that's obviously mature, it's usually a no-brainer for me. And not from the standpoint of it needs to be a giant, but it just needs to get me going. I just need to get excited about it. and not even think about. If I'm questioning it, it's probably a deer I'm not going to shoot.
Right. Yeah, we Casey and I have kind of discussed that a little bit. You know, and if you have a question, you know, you're probably better off just passing the deer in like more of a minute-to-minute situation, you know, but it does make sense. Yeah. So are you guys starting to see any development in your bucks yet, or do you have any targets already?
No. I mean, I probably a little bit further behind in running cameras than I normally am, just with moving and all that type of stuff. But I have got a couple solid bucks, nothing I recognize so far. But all my targets are based on, you know, the deer that I had last year that we found sheds to, or that we think made it. That's mostly what my targets are based on. I haven't necessarily found anything yet this year that confirms they're back and alive. And it'll be interesting on this new farm because I've never experienced it in the summer leading into, you know, October 1 opener. I haven't experienced that yet, so I don't know. Maybe these deer don't move in till November, or maybe they're there all year round. I'm really anxious to see how all that plays out, because most of the farms, like I was saying earlier, that I found in the past, because of the way the cover is, and there's a lot of thermal cover, pine tree thermal cover, that they just don't move into it very early. It's usually once all the other ag fields get picked and the other cover starts disappearing, leaves start coming off, that's when they move on to these other farms. So I'm anxious to see what this new farm is like. Yeah.
So is the new farm like your next challenge? You talked about loving the challenge earlier. Like, do you have any goals for this next season that you're really excited about?
Yeah, the biggest thing I think is just applying 2 months of hunting knowledge to it, and just continuing to learn everything I can about this piece. It's a piece that I hope to own for a long time. And I've never had the situation, like I mentioned earlier, I've had situations where I've been able to help manage, but I've never had something to call my own and to be able to do exactly what I want. I've always shared properties with other hunters, and granted, I'm sharing this one with Mike, but I've never had to worry about, you know, Mike and I are basically on the same page with what bucks to kill and which ones to let go. And when I let a deer go, I can almost, unless the neighbor's killed, I can almost guarantee that, you know, he'll be around the next year to hunt. So I'm really excited to experience that situation, as opposed to letting deer go and not really knowing if one of the other hunters on the farm is gonna kill him.
Right.
I'm excited about that, and I think it'll remain a challenge. This farm will remain a challenge for a long time. I think it's always going to be different. Even if you learn the terrain really well and learn the overall deer movement, there's still those individual personalities of bucks. It's going to change every single year based on which deer you're targeting. So I'm never afraid of that challenge running out, just because I target individual deer, not just any mature deer.
Yeah. So, kind of last question, I guess, for me. Outside of shooting deer or big bucks, or kind of the things that you generally tend to love deer hunting for, what is your favorite part about deer hunting experience that you've had?
I think it's hard to put into words. I think it's a great question. It's kind of like explaining to a non-hunter why we hunt. I think it's just very hard to explain. It's just it's something that I'm so passionate about, and I don't even know why I'm so passionate about. But it's, you know, you kind of go through life and you see people that don't have necessarily hobbies that they're real passionate about or anything. And I couldn't imagine my life without this hunting thing that I'm so passionate about, and it consumes my thoughts every single day. So I don't know what it is that I like so much about it. There's a lot of things that challenged, just being out there away from other things. Time seems to slow down a little bit. I'm not sure. It's hard to put into words, but there's just a lot of things that I think we're all in the same boat when it comes to that. But there's a lot of things that just make it, you know, our favorite thing to do, and we think about it all year long.
Yeah. Well, Jared, I can't thank you enough for your time. I know you do a lot for Midwest Whitetail and you stay really busy. What's the best way to connect with you guys for those that are interested?
Yeah, so we have our videos on a lot of different platforms. We're on MidwestWhitetail.com, of course, YouTube and Roku and Apple TV and Amazon, all that type of stuff. But MidwestWhitetail.com is probably the main spot. We have some new things coming this year that we're really excited about. And, of course, all the regular, consistent content. We'll be firing up the daily video blogs here in a little over a month, I guess, and the weekly episodes and all that type of stuff. We've taken some steps this year to increase our content and just do a better job of giving the viewers what they want in terms of regular content and helping people become better deer hunters. So, MidwestWhitetail.com is the best place to find all that.
Yeah, it's great, man. I was actually really sad when you guys put out the most recent video where Bill was like, yeah, we're going to take like a month and a half off or whatever he said. I was like, dang it, I've been looking forward to this every single week, whatever. And I really enjoy watching it. We'll link to all that below. And be safe traveling, man. And I wish the best for you this year, man. Hope you have a good year and get on some good deer.
Yeah, awesome. I appreciate the opportunity. I'm excited to follow your guys' story too. It's always fun to. That's the thing that I think will never get old, and that's what we do, and the stories and having this deer on public land. You guys just couldn't figure out last year. I'm excited to see what you apply this year and what happened. So good luck to you guys as well. And again, thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, dude. Thanks, man. And we'll be talking to you soon.
Awesome. Take care, guys.
See ya.
Thanks, Jared.
Nice guy, man. I enjoyed talking to Jared.
For sure, man. And what's crazy is I don't think he looks old, but I always thought he was older than us because he's accomplished so much in the deer hunting world, man.
Yeah. I know. I kind of had the same feeling. Like it's kind of weird, He's not an old-looking guy by any means, but he's just been around and shooting big bucks for a long time.
What a good guy to talk to, man. A guy you can learn a lot from.
Yeah, for sure, man. I guess, make sure and check out the links that we have. There are some from Midwest Whitetail and Jared shooting some monster bucks. Also, we have a link to our most recent film, or not really a film, just a video that is from my trip. I talked about it in the beginning of the episode, but it's a cool little fly fishing video where you get to see me catch fish that are 4 inches all the way up to like 16 inches, and round as a football. So check that out.
Footballs aren't very round.
Well, shaped like a football.
There you go.
Round as a basketball. Anyway, check that out. Check out all the links or whatever. And then we're going to be pretty busy. So be looking through our story here this weekend, because we are going to be, probably about the time you're listening to this, we will be at the QDMA National Convention. It is the 30th anniversary, and we're excited because it's in New Orleans.
Booty and crawfish and beignets.
Etouffees. It's so good, and it's so close. It's like our backyard, man. Like I've always said, like East Texas is like a perfect. It's like the place where like Texas, people think of like cowboys and like western dusty cattle drives and stuff, and like really East Texas isn't really like that, but we're also not Cajun. We're like right in the middle of like cattle country and crawfish country.
That's right, man.
And it's kind of like either way we go, we feel at home, So I'm gonna feel at home, and I'm gonna eat like I'm at home too.
Man,
cannot wait. But anyway, we'll see you on the other side of the QMA, hopefully with some good interviews and great information about deer and deer hunting. And remember, this is your element.
Living it.
Hey everybody, listen up. I got mega huge news. Meat Eater Live is heading back out on the road. That's right. Join me and the crew. Clay Newcomb, Cal, Yanni, Spencer's going to be there. Phil the engineer is going to be there. Meat Eater Live headed back out. Now, when you get every ticket, okay, every ticket you buy, you get a signed copy of our new Meat Eater Outdoor Cookbook. This tour is celebrating the release of the book. Buy a ticket, get a signed copy, Meat Eater Outdoor Cookbook, wild game recipes for the grill, smoker, camp stove, and campfire, which I'll point out is a $38 value. Here's where we're going to go. April 23rd, the Mesa Art Center in Mesa, Arizona. April 24, the Balboa Theater in San Diego. April 25, the Grove in Anaheim, California. April 27, the Crest Theater in Sacramento. April 29, the Union in Salt Lake City. April 30, the Egyptian in Boise. May 1, the Wilma Theater in Missoula. May 2, the Bing Crosby Theater in Spokane, Washington. May 4, Revolution Hall in Portland, Oregon. And May 5, the last day of the tour, Pantages Theater in Tacoma, Washington. For tickets and more information, visit the events page at themeateater.com. Hope to see you at the show.